That's one thing I actually wanted to ask you, to tie into some of the LEC runs, which is one thing I've noticed throughout the entire history of LCS and LEC whenever I've been watching it, is you do get these patterns. There are the teams that start off super, super hot, like Misfits did that obviously in this split now, over in NA, 100 Thieves did it. There's the team that starts the summer split super hot, everything's looking awesome. The amount of times that team ever actually makes it to the end of the summer split and is still the best, it almost never, ever happens. It sounds crazy. It's one of those ones where that's why I say it can't just be related to this season. It's something of like a pattern that happens, right? What do you think that is amazing? Because I've always been interested in, there must be so many factors can go into it. Why do you think we see this pattern repeat quite often?
I mean, I think, it could be related, Bernard, but I believe it more to be related to too long of a prep time making you think that you're already good. And this may sound really weird, but it's like, if you have a prep time of, like, say 2 to 3 weeks, right? Like, you come into the split and you're like, okay, we're going to take it slow. We're going to try to, like, just build up in the beginning, like, figure out new things. Like, you're not in the driver's seat at that point. You're someone that is spectating. You're someone that is taking in influence from other teams and trying to get better. The teams that have had a longer prep time, let's say 1.5 months or a month, whatever it is, they're already coming in very well prepared. It's always going to prepare them to a couple of wins, but they're given a lot of the info that they have accumulated over that month to the other teams by default, by just existing.
Yes.
So the teams that have more veterancy and more understanding, just general capabilities of understanding, which is basically like the cerebral aspect of the game, are going to figure out these things very, very early, understand, okay, this what this team is made of, and we're going to try to counter this, or we're going to try to get to that level, and they're going to try to adapt. So the team that is on top of the beginning actually has the harder task of staying ahead, whereas the other teams just have to copy and try to make it better. And I think that's actually easier to figure out from an outside perspective than someone that's within the process and has to continuously get better and make sure that the process stays on a good level. I think that's way harder.
I think it also ties into a bit, right, that some teams goes to MSI, goes to tournaments and other things. So they actually start practicing much, much later for the entire thing. And then once they get in there, they have a bad start. And one thing that I also want to mention is often when you start practicing, the practice is not as good because you're not on stage games, so people might play different. Right. And the practice might be really bad. Like in the past, for example, we had scrims where we won every single game. We talked about that before as well. We won every single game in 10 minutes and we didn't learn how to play the game. So once we actually got to stage, we just lost all the time for the first 4 games, but we ended up winning the entire season, right? So the practice before any state games is much less valuable because you don't actually know if it's going to work in on the stage.
I will say one thing I thought you actually made a very shrewd point about there, amazing, is people have to almost think of the split, even though it does sound like a weird analogy, like a group project. And the idea is, like, just because you're the first person to do well, like you did your part of it in this case, if you're the team leading the league, essentially, as you say, if you're better than the other teams and for good reason with how you've practiced and things you've innovated, you are then in the process of playing them over and over again, teaching them to potentially, keyword potentially, figure out the things that you've figured out. You're sort of teaching them to do it. So the problem in this scenario is, at the end of the split, as it were, the teams that actually know how to practice and practice against each other and learn, they're essentially all teaching each other. And it's just almost like some mad musical chairs of like, what week is the finals on? Because whatever week the finals on will actually determine who wins. It's why I've always thought in League, people do overvalue the idea that you can look at like one tournament result and decide like how good the player was that year. It's like, mate, it depends when the tournament was. Like, because I noticed the same phenomenon, by the way, happens in all the other games I follow, Dota, CSGO. Like, the worst time ever to be the best team in the world is in like fucking March, because obviously the big world championship is like at best, like, let's say like fucking October or something, you know, normally. So it's like the odds that you stay that good that long are really, really hard. And there's also the other factor as well. If you look at some of these teams, like, the Misfits one's a good example because they just kept the same lineup, didn't they? Other people were chopping and changing. Or what they did is they took a mid-table team, kept the exact same lineup. They knew some of them were rookies as well, so they knew they might automatically get better without anything even changing. And because we kept the same lineup, we don't start over again. We haven't reset ourselves. We hopefully start where we were, and then we add on to it. Whereas you saw, obviously, like SK is the extreme example. They're completely changing up the team. They are starting at 0. In fact, you could even say they were starting to be minus numbers if you think about the fact that people were playing roles they've never played before. I think that's a factor as well. That's one of the reasons why I always think it is weird to me that people don't look at the lesson of some of the really big orgs. Like, the most successful orgs in LCS and LEC most of them do have players who know how to peak. Like, they really know it doesn't actually matter if you're the best in week 2 of the split. Like, they might in interviews still get bothered and, it might look worrying if you lose 4 games in a row. But somehow these players and coaches and orgs, they sort of get that, like, you can sort of hit a panic button in, like, week 7 or something, right? You can sort of, like, say, right, we've got to really get our shit together now. And if we go really hard for 2 weeks, by the playoffs comes, we'll be good enough and we can still win. Like, that's one area that ties back into the experience thing. I feel like that's the big difference between rookies and veterans. The rookie does think you have to win every single game and you go 100%, at every match. The veteran sort of knows when you have to turn it on.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. Like, I mean, there's even if I think about it, like the LCS finals that I've played, or the LCS games that I've played so far. Like, I think with Schalke we were like third. We're third. We ended up being second. With Origin, one split, we ended up 4th and we ended up 2nd again. So that's something that people don't quite understand, is that peaking stuff is actually quite real. And we have historic reference from sports, obviously, that the seeding doesn't quite matter, because in the end, you still probably have to play every team, unless you probably still have to play actually the same teams in most cases. Like, you may have to play one more team that is maybe a tad better than you in terms of the seeding, but it's still going to be the same team that you're going to have to face if you're first place, right? They're going to make it there, and that's what it is. So I think that's what people disregard, that, like, again, end of the season success to me defines like what a player is about, and anyone that's claiming differently is honestly just attacking what the game. Like, I mean, honestly, I don't want to sound like someone that's like, I want to deal in absolutes. I'm not a Sith, but like, okay. I think the idea is like you're attacking merit, and you're attacking things that should be intrinsic to the game, which is basically success. Like, you want to succeed, you want to be the best team, you want to be the best player, whatever it is. Well, you got to prove it, and you got to prove it in playoffs. Like, the regular season doesn't matter. Like, it matters that you get to playoffs and you're going to perform there. And I think that's, again, like, that ties back into the whole rookie versus veteran debate, is that, like, what a lot of GMs do, and that's something I'm going to understand, is also that they over-evaluate, like, regular season success. They over-evaluate, like, teams that were good in the beginning. They over-evaluate individuals that have shown some promise in the regular season but couldn't carry that team to playoffs. Well, dude, if you're good enough, and I think maybe that era is kind of ending, but I think it still has some merit, because Wanda is kind of like, to a certain extent, proving that experience, is that, like, if you're good enough in terms of an individual player, well, at some point you're going to be able to transcend. And if you're able to transcend, that means you're going to make other people better. You're going to be able to shot call. You're going to be able to talk about the game more, problem solve. And that's why we have the best players continuously winning certain things, because they are able to do that. And that's, again, a disregard that a lot of GMs have for that, like, kind of intangibles that are there, because you're not evaluating. You're evaluating regular season success, which is akin to solo queue, more akin to solo queue than anything else, instead of, like, really thinking about playoff success. And I think that's where the cognitive dissonance between, like, at least, like, for me to a great extent actually comes from, where I'm like, okay, so what exactly are you evaluating? Regular season, interesting. What matters to you? What matters to you? Well, it matters to you to look good. Is that what it is? No, it shouldn't matter to you that you're winning and you're going to be the best team at the end of the split, or one of the best teams of the split. And I think that's what a lot of teams don't pursue or want to pursue or don't care about anymore. I think they just don't care about it anymore.
I also think one thing you have to keep in mind is how absolutely useless the LCS season is, right? It's like a year long, and literally 8 teams are going to make it to playoffs. So it's like, literally, the season doesn't even matter. As long as you can beat CLG and Golden Guardians, you're good to go. That's your benchmark. You need to be able to beat Golden Guardians and CLG. CLG has been a clusterfuck. You saw the coaching, you saw the sponsored Bud Light video they made. Like, this all could have been a clusterfuck this season, right? So, I mean, beating that is not that difficult. So, the only thing that's amazing is you just got to be able to win playoffs. That's it. You can be 8th, you can be 7th. That's fine. And all the teams will have the chance to do it at playoffs.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.